Hi, welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. You guys asked so many great questions for this August Q&A. We've got questions on Intel's big GPU launch. They've just made an announcement the other day. We've got more questions on NVIDIA's LHR limiters on their graphics cards getting hacked. What implications is that going to have for the GPU market? We've got a ton of memory questions, a ton of motherboard questions, and much, much more. Of course, that's what we do here at this channel. We're about getting you the best price to performance in your PC. So remember, if you get value out of this video, give it a like. It makes a really big difference. And of course, we just hit 50,000 subscribers. So click that subscribe button, come join us, and click the bell icon. That way you get notified when we go live. All right, with that, let's jump into some of these really awesome questions. Intel GPU announcement. It's called Intel Arc. You guys asked a lot of really good questions about it. So I just want to give a shout out to Runestar, to Quinn, to Ryan Hillary, Elite Destroyer, 00, and Symbiont Gaming. All really good questions. Let's start off with the name of this thing. It's called Intel Arc. There already is an Intel Arc. Many of you may know it's Intel's database of all of its processors. It's Arc with a K, as in Noah's Ark. And when you actually search for Intel Arc, which is their new GPU series, Google tells you you're doing it wrong, and they give you results for Arc with a K instead. Like, I don't know what marketing genius thought this would be a good idea without checking the search results for it. My goodness. But if we just kind of step aside from that and we go to actually what is Intel Arc? Well, Arc is going to be their GeForce, their Radeon. It's going to be their name for their GPU lineup, and it's going to include both mobile GPUs as well as dedicated GPUs for desktops and additional products that they kind of just left open for right now for development. What do we know about Intel Arc, right? With Arc with a C. Well, not much. I mean, look, there is a ton of speculation on right now. People are speculating based on the execution units, the core counts, all that kind of stuff in terms of what they think the performance is going to be and leaked benchmarks. And I would take all of that with a heavy grain of salt. I don't think anybody knows anything right now. I think it's safe to assume that they probably can compete at least with the mid-range of cards from AMD and NVIDIA right now. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't launch at all. And I think given the type of features that they're advertising, including their upscaler, but particularly ray tracing, that to me says they're ready to compete at a high level. We'll find out though. They announced this for Q1 2022. I know to a lot of folks, including myself, that's a little disappointing. I've heard that they're going to try mobile first and then they're going to go desktop. So I hope that's wrong. I hope they maybe introduce both at the same time and they roll out on desktop sometime in Q1 2022. I was really hoping for a Q4 2021 announcement, even if it's something like November, December, because this GPU market sucks. I think Intel, if they could have gone earlier, they would have given the market. To me, this means that they're not able to go any earlier than they can. So that's the announcement. Now, should you wait for it? You know, at this point, you're probably going to have to, unless you're able to win the Newegg Shuffle, unless you're able to, get on a Discord drop, or unless you're willing to just say, forget it and pay a lot of money through a third party right now. You really don't have many other options, I think. We're waiting for Ethereum to go proof of stake by the end of the year. Graphics card prices are no longer dropping, by the way. I monitor eBay prices. They've all either flatlined or in some cases, like the 3060, for instance, they've started to tick back up just slightly right now. Would I buy one? If I have a choice between an NVIDIA card and an AMD card, or I can buy an Intel card, I would probably, if I'm just a regular consumer, I'd go for the AMD and NVIDIA card because their technology and their platform is just so much more mature. And I think last time I used the example of the Ryzen 1000 series, right? The very first Ryzen CPUs. There were a lot of early adopters who jumped on that thing. It was buggy as heck. If you compare it to Ryzen 5000 now, Ryzen 5000 is a rock solid platform. It had memory issues initially. It had all kinds of compatibility issues. It would just suddenly freeze. It had it was a mess, but AMD fixed it. I expect Intel GPUs to be somewhere in that. It's going to be a little bit of a mess. Games are going to crash on you. You're going to have some weird inconsistencies. You're going to see people like me making videos about how bad it is on this or that. They'll clean all that up. They will definitely get it fixed, but probably by the second generation. All right, sticking around with the GPU market, Harshith Reddy asks, hey, Jason, there's a software that unlocks the hash rate limiter on LHR series cards, that's the NVIDIA cards, from 50% to 70%. What's my view on it? My view is, crap. Yeah, I think we all knew this was going to happen. So first, let's talk about what is the LHR. That's the light hash rate cards that NVIDIA introduced as a hardware solution, a hardware and firmware solution in order to limit Ethereum mining on their GPUs and make them less attractive to Ethereum miners, because those are the folks who, as I described in my last GPU video, have descended upon the GPU market like a swarm of locusts and eaten every available card up to the point where it just to kind of push this point a little bit, there's a great article in Forbes. I'll link it down in the description. It's a brother and sister in, I believe it's Houston or North Dallas, here we go, that's making $32,000 a month on Ethereum mining, and how they started with just a couple of graphics cards, and now they have something like 94 different graphics cards right now in various farms, and now they've got one down in downtown Dallas in an air-conditioned center. This is why graphics cards are not around, because people start buying them, they set up a farm, it's making the money, they go out, they buy more, it makes more money, they're willing to pay any price necessary because Ethereum is going back up. I'm not going to rehash my previous video. Jumping back to the bummer about this hack, is it a hack? It's really an efficiency increase. It doesn't seem like, from the information I've received, that the NB Miner tool, it really hacks the LHR. It just kind of tricks it to give it a little bit more performance. So it does up it from 70% up from the 50% limiter. Now, they've actually recommended people actually dial that back to 68% for some reason. I think it is a little bit of a bummer because this is Ethereum mining. Yeah, it's going to hurt the GPU market. And I think this is just going to further embolden miners to go out there and get whatever they can get right now, before the gravy train has kind of set sail and Ethereum moves to 2.0, where it's no longer GPU mineable. Again, we've been promised that by the folks who control Ethereum for the end of this year. I expect it'll probably happen early in 2022, but at this point we can now count that in months. We're not counting that in years anymore. So when that happens, there's going to be a lot of hash rate power. Again, I went over all this in my video. There's so much hashing power right now. Let's just throw it up here. If we look at the Ethereum difficulty, there's so much. Look at it. It's crazy. There's so much hashing power on Ethereum right now that when it goes proof of stake and those folks can't mine that. I know they all think they're going to go mine Ravencoin and Ergo and you name it. Well, all those other coins, their market cap added up is still a fraction of what Ethereum is. Ethereum is the Death Star of cryptocurrency right now. And all those folks out there, they're just little tiny pebbles compared to it. So prepare yourself. I believe very strongly there will be a flood of used graphics cards in Q1 or Q2 2022. So that's next year. There's going to be an absolute flood as those miners, realizing that their profits are going to come way down. They're going to crush all those other currencies down in terms of the difficulty on them. And they're going to seek to get reimbursement for those cards by selling them on the used market, hoping to take advantage of the high prices. So my advice continues to be, if you're out there looking for a graphics card, just unless you can win Newegg Shuffle and get something at MSRP. And the 6600 XT, as I said, that's actually a good option in this crappy market if you can't wait for whatever reason. You have to build now. Otherwise, I'd wait, and this is going to be a huge part of it when Ethereum goes proof of stake. But in the meantime, yeah, this is bad news. Our next question comes to us from Zhao. Zhao's looking to buy an RTX 3060 Ti, but he's really confused. MSI, EVGA, Gigabyte, Zotac. Which brand makes the best cards and which model's the best one? And I can certainly understand the confusion there as a regular consumer. The funny thing is that I don't know myself right now, and I'm not sure too many other tech YouTubers know, because this generation's launch has been so screwed up by shortages. Now, typically what happens is we would get, I don't usually get them, but other reviewers would get graphics cards to review. Hopefully we'll get some to review in the future. And then you test them out and you test them against, how well do they overclock? How well does the cooling work on it? How many FPS does it get compared to the Founders Edition model or compared to this other model? And we'd at least have some general idea based on the price to performance, what are the best RTX 3060 cards? I got the RTX 3060 Dual in the frame behind me here that you can see. Now, here's the short answer. The short answer is whatever card you can get right now is the best card you can get. But that's just what happens in a shortage environment. And I think, though, that once Ethereum moved to proof of stake, sometime in the first or second quarter of 2022, when this flood of used graphics cards, knock on wood as I say this, comes to the market, you will see a lot more of that comparative analysis. I'll certainly do more of that comparative analysis. All right, memory questions. And we get so many memory questions here. Now, some of those are answered by my best memory for Ryzen 5000 video. I'll leave a link to the card right there. But some of them are really good questions. And I'm about to contradict a little bit of the advice I give in that earlier video from December of 2020, because the market has fundamentally changed, and that's with regards to dual rank. But first, I want to give a shout out to Shoryavir, to Wordy Odd, to Bray and Pack Store, to Rasai, Alexa Renee, Mark Perkins, and Morris Bates, who all pumped in some really good questions. So I'm just going to knock those out. 3600 CL18 or 3200 CL14. 3200 CL14 is probably going to be the better memory if you want to overclock. You're splitting, I feel like you're probably splitting a lot of hairs there, and it's going to depend on how memory sensitive your applications are. 3200 CL14 tends to be very expensive, so I would recommend 3600 CL18 or 3200 CL16 just for the price of performance. Dual rank nature of memory. This is, I think, the real kind of sticking point. So a lot of people get dual rank and dual channel confused. Dual channel just means you have two sticks, basically. Dual rank just means that you have basically the memory controller is fully engaged, and it's with two ranks of memory. And for desktop CPUs as we know them, that's what they use, servers and other things. You can go up higher. Memory bundlers, there's only a handful of companies that actually make memory. It's Hynix, Samsung, and the other one just totally flew out of my head a second ago. But everybody else like G.Skill, Corsair, they just buy the memory, they test it, they bin it, they put a heat spreader on it, they give it an XMP profile, and then maybe some RGB and stuff, and they send it out to you. You can get kits now with the exact same serial numbers on them, not serials, exact same model numbers on them, that one of them will come dual rank and one of them will come single rank, because they're actually different kinds of dies. And I'm going to go into this more in a future video, so stay subscribed for that, stay tuned for that. But what I'm telling folks right now is if you want to get the benefits of dual rank, which again, we saw anywhere from a 3 to 7% uplift in performance for gaming and for memory sensitive applications for Ryzen 5000, going from single rank to dual rank. If you want to get that, I would recommend right now you get a 4x8 gigabyte kit. That's probably the best way to guarantee it. The other way you can do it is you just start buying some 2x16 kits, and if you put them in, and if you run a program called Typhoon Burner and it's not in fact dual rank memory, then you just send the kit back to Amazon or Newegg and say, oh, I want this kit instead. That's effectively it in a nutshell, and it's a bummer that you can't even tell by the model number any longer on the 16 gig. So I wish I could give you a list, but I can't even necessarily give you a list. And finally, Morris Bates wants to know, is it better to use a RAM at the highest rated speed recommended by the CPU under the qualified vendor list or on the CPU specs, or just go ahead and use what's rated on the XMP or DOCP profiles on the memory itself? Well, I'll tell you, I would go ahead and try the XMP or the DOCP profile first. I'm going to guess that especially if you have Ryzen 5000, Ryzen 3000, Intel 11th or 10th generation, you're probably going to get that memory to work at that rate. Now, that's not always the case, but generally going to be the case. Those platforms have become more and more and more stable, especially on the Ryzen side. At this point, you should be able to buy any memory whatsoever, unless it specifically says like Intel only. I know there is some of that floating out there, but you should be able to buy just about any memory whatsoever and get it to work at the memory rating speed, as long as you're not exceeding something like 4,000 speed. Once you get above there and you get into the more extreme overclocks, you're really kind of pushing some of the capabilities of your particular motherboard. You've got to take into account the memory controller, other things. But if you're just looking to buy memory, and for Ryzen, I would recommend 3200 CL16. 3600 CL18 or CL16. possibly, DDR4 4000, CL16 or CL18. Though that's kind of the range of memories that I would recommend. You're not going to see that big a difference in most applications going from 3200 CL16, like I said before, up to 3600 CL16. But if you want to make sure that you're getting the most performance, 3600 CL16 is probably the sweet spot. Got Osama Lazar. He says there's always some kind of problems in almost any motherboard: RAM overclocking, USB ports, Wi-Fi, etc. Even in the top tier ones. Is this going to disappear in the next generation? That's the first question. And then should he wait to buy a specific one now? He heard the B550 Tomahawk is good. Yeah. Those problems will never disappear. Every generation of motherboard, every generation of CPUs, we're going to get some small kind of persistent bug that you hear about that most users probably don't experience, but enough users do that it's just kind of this thing that's in everyone's consciousness. That was the case, for instance, with the USB ports having some connectivity issues with AMD until they released their recent updates. Looks like that's a squished bug now. That's just going to be the nature of adopting the newest, latest, greatest platform. And if you don't want to do that, my recommendation would always be, buy the last generation. So when the next generation of Ryzen comes out, build yourself a Ryzen 5000 system as opposed to moving to the AM5 socket and whatever new issues you're going to have with DDR5 memory compatibility, the new socket, all kinds of other issues that could come with it. Go ahead and build yourself a Ryzen 5000 system. It'll be extremely stable. I tend to be more of an early adopter myself, but I can go back and forth on that. In terms of specific motherboards, check out my best motherboards for Ryzen 5000 series. I'll leave, again, I think it's already up there in the card. Check it out. I go through the motherboards in more detail, and I know I get these questions all the time. I got some really good recommendations in there. Check them out. All right, now I got a bunch of questions about my background from Harshith Reddy, Ryan Hillary, DDLOP, and iCaptain OG. I still love that name, by the way. Folks want to know, how did I get into the gaming space? How did I get into building PCs? I'm going to keep this really brief. I got into this space very young as a kid, but I believe our first computer was an Apple II. And although I played some other games like Moonlander and things like that, maybe even Apple I, I can't quite remember. I was a very little kid, and my dad built Heathkit computers. These are these old kit computers that you put together, kind of like almost like a calculator nowadays, but you'd actually solder in everything. They were really, really cool. And one of the first games that I got really excited about was Wizardry. And Wizardry was the first dungeon crawler, if you will. There was a number of other them like Zork, and I could just spit out a bunch of names. Most folks probably won't remember any of the games I'm talking about. And then I got into the Ultima collection, but I got really into those kind of role-playing dungeon crawler type games that later became more open world games with things like Ultima. And from there I was hooked. And then I got into shooters, and Doom was a huge part of my life in the 90s. We set up like a LAN parties and things like that. And I've been building PCs my whole life, since we called them IBM clones back in the day. Just been building them, and off and on. So sometimes I've actually bought pre-builts when I've been busier in my life. Sometimes I've been really into building my own. It's always been a lot of fun for me. It's always been something I've had a really deep passion for. Again, when I've gotten super busy at other points in my life, it's tended to go to the side for whether work or other kind of life events. But now I feel like I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I know a lot of other folks are having a lot of fun, even in this kind of crazy, stupid market that we've got right now. I think it's still possible to get together, to geek out, and never forget this is a hobby. We're doing this for fun. And that's my goal for this channel. Let's keep having fun together, geeking out on this stuff. We've got questions on GPUs, more GPU questions. This time it's more on the performance side and on hooking them up to monitors. We've got Herdado 102. It says that, I mentioned DisplayPort should be used over HDMI for gaming. Why is it? Well, quite simply, it's the best generic advice I can give to anybody, is to use your DisplayPort instead of HDMI. Why is that? Well, most graphics cards that are sold, NVIDIA still dominates the market. They have about 80% market share. But if you look at most of the monitors sold, they have FreeSync, AMD FreeSync. Well, NVIDIA cards will support FreeSync, but they'll only support it over a DisplayPort cable. So make sure you use that DisplayPort. So that's one reason I tell people DisplayPort. The other reason is that most monitors were either HDMI, I believe it's 1.4 or 2.0, but DisplayPort 1.4 is much faster than HDMI 2.0. So you're going to get more bandwidth out of that HDMI cable. Now that's not going to be the case with HDMI 2.1, which just came out. There's not a lot of HDMI 2.1 monitors. So those are some of the reasons I always urge people to use DisplayPort, because it's the most generic advice I can give, where even if people take it totally out of context, they're going to do the right thing. So that's why I say DisplayPort, because at the end of the day, HDMI doesn't offer any benefits that DisplayPort doesn't already have, and DisplayPort offers benefits that HDMI doesn't have. May not be true for HDMI 2.1 as much, but right now for 95% of the monitors that people have or are buying right now, DisplayPort's going to do you better. And Noel asks, are AMD graphics cards good? Their friend needs a 6900 XT for only gaming and Twitch streaming. Well, I will tell you this. So what's the difference between AMD and NVIDIA right now? They both have phenomenal gaming performance. AMD tends to be better at rasterized performance at 1080p and 1440p, and NVIDIA catches up at 4K, and in some cases, with some cards, begins to exceed. But honestly, if you're just gaming, you'd be happy with any of these cards. The real difference comes when you want to do something other than just game, when you want to stream, when you want to do video encoding. NVIDIA's video encoder, their NVENC video encoder, is still leagues better than, I can't remember the AMD one right now. That's how not competitive it is. I'm not saying you can't do these with AMD cards. If you want to video edit at some point, you'd be fine. But if you're going to do this for work, if you are a serious streamer, if you're like streaming 3, 4, 5 times a week and you've got a big stream and this is like where you want to be and you're really serious about it, you absolutely should be getting an NVIDIA card. I know that's hard right now given the state of the GPU market, but that's the way I would think about it. Now, I would hope the way that AMD introduced the Radeon 6000 series, they talked about that they're still on a journey. What I took out of Lisa Su's announcement speech is that they still know that they're behind in terms of productivity. That's why all their marketing was focused on gaming, and they have had very little in terms of productivity marketing. I have a feeling that they know they're behind, but their choice this generation was to start competing again at gaming at the high end. That was their sole focus. I suspect AMD has a couple cards up their sleeve for the next generation of cards, which I hope will begin to close the productivity gap with NVIDIA, because again, we don't want monopolies. Monopolies are bad. I hope you enjoyed our August Q&A. Of course, remember to give the video a like if you got value out of it. It really does help out the channel. We just hit 50,000 subscribers not too long ago, so come join us. Click the subscribe button and the bell icon. The bell icon is really important to get notified when we go live. As always, I'd love to hear more of your thoughts down in the comments. I try and respond to everybody. And with that, I'll catch you on the next one.